Hey guys, welcome back to another video on the travel buffet. As you can see, I am home now, no longer in Amsterdam, although this setting may look new to you because I'm in my office. I've always been kind of resistant to recording in here because it's like a small space with hard floors, and so the acoustics are not great. But we're going to give it a shot and see how it goes. I kind of wanted to touch base because the Amsterdam trip was such a whirlwind trip. And I'm finally home and like kind of caught up on life and things, and I wanted to talk to you about our last day that we had there. So we didn't really have any set in stone plans that day, and we actually ended up making some last minute plans while we were there. But I kind of noticed that like the food that we were having was really good on our trip. But we hadn't done anything that was like traditional Dutch cuisine. You know, we tried Indonesian food and we had pizza that was like ingredients imported from Italy, things like that. But we haven't actually tried true Dutch food. And I was like, what even is Dutch food? So this was kind of like the focus for our day. So we actually ended up sleeping in pretty late that day. We didn't get going until like lunchtime. So we left our hotel, which by the way, it felt really good to sleep in just because our bodies were like, what time is it? You know, we've been like totally screwing with our body clocks and it was just out of whack. But so we got dressed and got out of the hotel around like 1 o'clock. And by the time we rode the metro into the city center, it was like almost 2. So sadly, much of our day was kind of gone. But we decided to work our way up from like the bottom of the city center area up towards like Central Station. So we basically made our way along this street, what's known as the Damrak. And I'm just going to say my pronunciation still isn't great. It's not improved. I continue to apologize to the whole of the Netherlands country because I know I suck. I'm an American. But we found some really interesting shops while we were in this area because it's kind of like a little bit, I mean, it's touristy, but this was like their main shopping strip, not like, you know, the really expensive shops necessarily, you know, your Zara's and your H&M's and things like that. But we did go in a couple different shops while we were there, and I actually found one that I totally love. It's called HEMA, or it might just be an acronym HEMA. I'm not entirely sure. I wish that I would have taken some photos or videos while I was in there, but I didn't because I'm terrible. But I just wanted to let you know how awesome it was. It's kind of like a hybrid between like a TJ Maxx and an IKEA. Like if you can imagine the two of those, like that marriage, that's wonderful. So highly recommend. The prices were fabulous. They had all kinds of things from beauty products to clothing to decorations to household items, things like that. It was fabulous. And I actually picked up a souvenir from that shop and I'll show that to you here in just a minute. So we shopped around and we found a few items, got a couple souvenirs, things like that. But we intentionally put ourselves in this area so that we could do a cheese tasting, well, cheese and wine tasting, because the two just go together beautifully. But we decided, because it was last minute, to make a booking with the old Amsterdam cheese store, and we were pretty satisfied with this experience. I mean, I did a lot of research this particular morning trying to find a good place to go, and while it wasn't my first choice, there was some place that was called The Attic or something by some guy named Henry Villig, and it did seem like they had a couple locations around, but it was pretty booked up that day. So we went with my second choice, which mostly just had a preferable time for us to make a reservation. But it was the old Amsterdam cheese store, and this is a chain, so you will see them all across the city. But I thought that the food quality was pretty good. We tried a couple different cheeses. If you've heard of Gouda before, this is a cheese that's produced in the Netherlands, or it used to be, but they let us know that because they didn't have like a patent on, you know, the specific requirements that you have to have in order to make a product. So for example, let me talk you through this. So bourbon, for example, has some really specific rules about what makes it bourbon. Has to be made in the US, has to be made in a virgin white oak cask, has to be aged for at least 2 years, things like this. They didn't have anything that said that Gouda cheese had to be produced in the Netherlands, and so people are making Gouda cheese all over the world, and they're calling it Gouda cheese. And so the city that's actually called Gouda in the Netherlands didn't really like this very much, and so they've actually moved cheese production out of that city. But there are still a lot of really traditional families that like this style of cheese, and so they're still making it in parts of the Netherlands and really all over the world now. So we thought we should do a Gouda tasting, and again, I'm going to touch on my bad pronunciation. I would have never guessed that it's a more like throaty sound, like the way you're supposed to pronounce it is actually something more like howda. So more like an H, but you need to get the extra like phlegm in there. But I suck. And so I'm not good at that. Unfortunately, we've been saying that wrong our whole lives. Story of my life. But I was really impressed with the cheese that we had. We tried a couple different Goudas, and I'm just going to keep calling it that because it's too late for me. I'm too far gone at this point. They gave us 5 different cheeses to sample, starting from youngest to most aged. And they talked us through some of the processes on how they make cheese. We did end up buying 2 cheeses. I did not get them out. Let me go get those. I guess the less expensive of the 2 is a goat cheese that we tried. So this was, I think, the 3rd cheese that we tasted. And I believe he paired it with a Sauvignon Blanc. I could be wrong about that. Might have been a Chardonnay. In any case, it's not like most goat cheeses that I've had. Usually, the goat cheese I'm familiar with is very pungent, and it comes in like a tube. You can mold it and shape it more so instead of being like in a block form. So I thought that this was definitely very interesting, and it was more mild than we had in the past. So this one was actually Craig's pick of the 5 cheeses that we tasted. And then mine, of course, naturally, I chose the most expensive one. But this is a traditional Gouda cheese that is actually their vintage edition. And so it's been aged the longest. It was a little harder if you think about like the texture of cheese when you bite into it, how easily it melts in your mouth, or like how easily your teeth will go through it, how it breaks apart. It was very flaky, and I tend to really like that in a cheese. So this was my choice. It was also a little bit nuttier. I think they paired this one with a red wine. It was a cab of some sort. And so it's good to have kind of one of each, one for white, one for red. So we are looking forward to enjoying these now that we are home, bringing a little bit of Amsterdam back with us. Really, the rest of the day, we kind of just wandered around. We did try to go to a rooftop bar, but it was a little bit rainy, and so we ended up just kind of walking around the city, and we got a great view of the central station, which is just gorgeous. I mean, the architecture, the Dutch architecture, they just got it right. It's just so pretty and ornate. It almost has like a Gothic feel to it, but it's so much more colorful instead of like dark and dank looking. And of course, having Christmas lights up everywhere really helps. So we finished out our night by heading over to a traditional Dutch restaurant that had amazing reviews on Yelp called The Pantry. And it really lived up to its name. I mean, it was small and like a pantry. You could make reservations online, but they don't let you do it within 24 hours of coming. And so I was like, we'll just wing it and see how it goes. There's another restaurant we could go to if needed. It turned out there was only a 20-minute wait. And so we just kind of hung around, and they even seated us sooner than they said, which was really nice. I just wanted to try something Dutch. I had never heard of Dutch food before, and I was like, let's give this a go. Turns out it's a very meat and potato-y kind of meal, at least this particular cuisine that I had. So, and I'm going to read it because, again, my pronunciation is just horrendous. In true form, and my mom will appreciate this, I got the sampler platter because it was like, when in Amsterdam, got to try the Dutch food, and if I could have, 3 things in one meal, why wouldn't I do that? Obviously. So the 3 things that I had, it was basically kind of like 3 different types of mashed potatoes almost. The first one is called hutspot. It was kind of like a beef stew. It had carrots and onions, obviously meatball in the center, but I got to choose between sausage or meatball. The next one was something called boerenkoolstampot, and that's definitely not how you say that, but it was mashed potatoes mixed with kale, and so that's where you get that green color from. I had originally thought it was spinach. The third one was called zuurkoolstampot, and that was mashed potatoes that are mixed with sauerkraut. And I have recently become a big fan of sauerkraut. We're actually planning a trip to go to Oktoberfest next year, and I'm like, bring on the schnitzel, the sausages, and the sauerkraut. Please and thank you. So I was really excited about that one. It looked the most like regular mashed potatoes, and I'm pretty sure I got Craig to try a bite of it, and I don't think he hated it, so that's not bad at all. Craig had the typical Dutch ham, and it was super rich. I mean, it had like this honey mustard sauce on it, and it had fries on the side. It was just like very carby and rich. I think he was maybe a little regretful that it was so intense, but I believe he liked it a lot. We were both pretty satisfied with our meals that night. We topped off the evening at our new favorite Scotch bar, which I'm pretty sure I told you about, but if I didn't, here's an Instagram cam for you showing our awesome Scotch bar. It's got 2 layers, like 2 stories of bottles of Scotch, like on this cool shelf contraption thing. You have to have a ladder to get to it. And they have over 2,000 unique bottles of Scotch on site there. Like, clearly we were in heaven. So we tried a ton of new scotches that we just loved, and we'll have to get more to add to our collection at home. And we had a really pretty simple, straightforward time getting home the next day. You know, got to the airport, the line was a little long, but we still made it on our flight, so it was all good. And had our layover in JFK with no problems, and we made it on home just fine. So we are still kind of getting caught up from our whirlwind vacation, but it was a really good time. So we are not, you know, regretful of anything, even though we kind of slept in on the last day. I felt like on vacation you got to take care of yourself and you can't do it all, and we feel really satisfied with the amount of things that we were able to do in the time that we were there. But we did pick up some goodies, so I already showed you my cheese, but let me show you some of the other souvenirs that we picked up. I'm not a big souvenir person, but these are just a few of the items that I felt like we could really use. So this first one is probably the most touristy souvenir that I got, but it was just this cute mug that says Amsterdam, Holland on it. And I've always been like kind of confused why it's called both Holland and the Netherlands. If you know why that is, you let me know, because I would love to figure out the difference. I mean, I think they're one and the same and are used interchangeably, but if one is more appropriate for certain things than others, I'd love to know about it. So, but this was a very classic mug. Craig said he liked it and I liked it, so we can both use this one. We're kind of weird about our mugs, so we have this like matching mug set that we use for coffee that we registered our wedding gifts for, and so we've got like matching red and black mugs that we have hung on a mug shelf thing in the kitchen. But when we drink tea at night, and we drink tea every night, we have a hodgepodge collection of mismatched mugs, and we use our mismatched mugs for our tea at night. And I don't know why that is, but it makes my heart happy, and so I'm going to keep doing it. Another thing that we picked up is this little bottle opener, and it looks like it says Walhalla, but it is pronounced Valhalla. And you may be familiar with this term from watching Marvel movies with Thor in it, or just from Nordic mythology. But Valhalla is the place that warriors go in Nordic mythology after they die. It's like their version of heaven, like their celebration in the afterlife. And so this brewery that we went to is called Valhalla. We love the beer, we love the vibe there. We're big craft beer fans, and so it was kind of fun to go try craft beer overseas and see what their impression or interpretation, I suppose, of a really popular concept is. And we really liked what they had going on there. It was pretty fun, and the beer tasted really good. And so we got a little souvenir to remember it by. So this is something more practical. It's not really a souvenir, but Craig and I use the Nivea facial cream as our moisturizer every day. So when I wash my face, I always use my toner, and then I put my moisturizer on with it. And we found these teeny tiny little versions of our Nivea creams, which are usually like really big. I mean, it's like probably at least a pound or two if you get like a brand new full one. Probably just 1 pound. I don't know. I'm probably exaggerating some. Maybe a pound and a half. I don't know. I'm not good with numbers. But I was excited to find these because these are the perfect travel size. And for some reason, the U.S. like drugstores and grocery stores don't seem to have a lot of Nivea products. I think that it's maybe a European brand. And so the fact that they have any at all is great. But I was really excited. They had a whole Nivea section in this drugstore that we went into. And I was like, oh, heck yes. And especially I found these, so we got one for each of us, and now we can use them when we travel. So, and they're really easy to scrape out. I mean, it's still got the seal on it, but I mean, it's all just in here right there. So I can take a spoon with my big tub and just spoon it into this one and be on my merry way. And it's not too heavy. Although I think it may still be too big to take on an airplane, but it's still just in general, like you don't want to weigh your bag down too much with a bulky thing. And like if you're using a smaller bag to keep all your toiletries together, this fits in a lot better. So in the same line of cosmetics, at that HEMA store that I was telling you about, I picked up this mirror, and I thought it would be great for traveling. So it's bigger, and you can see your whole face really nicely, and it just like sits up really well on a tabletop and doesn't slide. And so I thought it would be a great thing to take when I travel places, because sometimes there's not a great mirror, or I need to get ready in a separate place, especially if I'm sharing a room like with my mom and she needs to use the bathroom for some reason. I can take all my makeup and go somewhere else and have a nice big mirror to use to get ready and not hold anybody up. So I was really excited about this. Also, in that same drugstore that we found the Nivea moisturizers, I decided to pick up some lip gloss. So I've actually found that I really like European makeup products, especially nail polish. It just seems like it stays longer, it doesn't chip, and I'm sure it depends on the brand as well. One of my favorite things when I go abroad is just to go in stores and look at the everyday products and be like, this is what these people use every day, and it's just so different than American products. So I picked up a lip gloss that it's a matte, and it is the Bourjois brand, and it's actually French, but they were selling it at this drugstore, and so it is the Rouge Edition Velvet line, and it is in the number 7 shade, which is nudist. I tend to like a lot of natural nude colors on my face, but what I like the most about it is that it has a matte finish. So I'll go ahead and try it on real quick and show you kind of what it looks like. So it's actually a little bit more pink than something that I would normally put on my face, but I kind of like it. I don't have anything similar to it. I have a lot of brown tones and red tones, and so now that we're going to be rounding into spring in a few months, I think a nice light pink shade is really nice, and it's not too in your face. It's very subtle, and so I'm a big fan of this one. It does really, it feels like velvet on my lips. And it's interesting because it's a gloss, but with the matte finish, it dries and kind of looks like lipstick, but it's still liquidy. Like I can still feel it pushing around on my lips. So it's very comfortable, and I'm pretty satisfied with this purchase. I think it was only a few euros. So that kind of rounds out all the souvenirs that we got. We're not big souvenir people. We're definitely more like experience people, taste the food and drink and talk to the people and see what life is like whenever we go other places. But I did want to let you know a few impressions that I had of Amsterdam, just to kind of close out this vacation that we went on. So one of the biggest things that I thought was really great was that a lot of people spoke English, and that is awesome because we've already covered the fact that I'm not very good with Dutch. In fact, I don't even know how to say thank you in Dutch. I almost always try to learn languages before I go places, so that way I can at least say hello, goodbye, thank you, where are the bathrooms, can I have a glass of wine, the important things, obviously. But when I was researching Dutch, I was just overwhelmed and intimidated, if I'm being honest, and even the pronunciation I can't seem to master. And I did give it a go a couple times while I was there, and I got corrected a bunch, and I'm just like, I just don't even, motivation was really low, unfortunately. And we were only there for a couple days, and so it was just like, how much effort should I really be trying to make here? I had no problems at all while I was there. Anyone I spoke to spoke English, and most people would just automatically start speaking English to me, which I used to find kind of insulting, I guess, especially if I was really trying to make an effort. In a foreign country, like when I've been to France, I always do my best to say please. And what even is please in French? All I can think of is por favor right now, and I know that that's Spanish. S'il vous plaît. Glad I figured that out. Whew. So it used to really bother me, like I was saying, that people would just speak English to me, but I actually kind of made peace with that this trip, and I actually really noticed, especially, and it may just be the Netherlands versus other countries, but there were a lot of people that didn't speak Dutch, and Dutch is not one of the more common languages that is spoken. There are a lot of Spanish speakers in the world, a lot of French speakers, even Italian. But I don't think that Dutch is spoken as often as a lot of these other languages. And so I heard lots of people with accents speaking English, and then I would hear them say where they're from. They're like, oh, I'm from Italy, but they're talking in English because they don't speak Dutch. And so it's finally just now occurring to me that I always feel like as an American tourist, I go into a foreign country and there's this pressure about the languages, because a lot of Americans are speak my language. But I've realized that it's not just Americans, it's actually everybody that doesn't speak the native language. And so, Germans that come to the Netherlands, they speak English because they don't speak Dutch, unless they happen to speak Dutch, but it's not very common. People who are Asian, people that speak Chinese, people that speak Japanese, Korean, anything. I've learned that English is just kind of like the common tongue. And that's a Game of Thrones reference for you because I'm a nerd, sorry. But I finally made some peace with the fact that I don't speak every language in the world, and I'm very fortunate and privileged that English happens to be the common language that people have started speaking all across the world. So as like the basic form of communication so that everybody can talk with everybody. And so as an American, I'm very privileged for this reason. And I'm trying to take away the guilt that I usually feel when I travel to foreign countries about not speaking the language. But, it could have been any language that they chose. They could have chosen Mandarin, which is the #1 most spoken language in the world. And then Americans, would have to accommodate to that. But like I said, we just happen to be really fortunate that English has kind of been like chosen as this universal language that everybody speaks with each other. And so it was really comforting to see like other tourists who English wasn't their first language, but they were still speaking English so that they could communicate with the people in Amsterdam. I just thought it was very cool. Another thing, like I mentioned earlier, it was kind of a melting pot of cultures, which I thought was really interesting. Like I mentioned, we got Indonesian food and Italian food, and then we tried Dutch food, and it was just like this big melting pot of cultures. I don't think that we actually had the same cuisine type 2 times in a row. And granted, we weren't there for very long, but like my Italy trip that I went on earlier this year, I had Italian food every single night. And so it was really kind of interesting. The only other city that I've been to that is kind of like this is Toronto, which is a city that's known for people moving there as like an immigrant into this new area. And so as a result of that, a lot of different cultures come together, and there's just a lot of different options available to you. So I felt like we could have even stayed a few days longer and tried a ton of new things, and would have been really satisfied and intrigued by that. One thing about the food, I noticed that pancakes is a huge thing over there. Like it seemed like they had a big chain of like stores that say Dutch pancakes. And we didn't actually try Dutch pancakes. I did get a waffle one night, but I know waffles are more like a Belgian thing, which Belgium is right next door to the Netherlands, if you didn't know that. But I've always been a big waffle person more than pancakes. Like, I don't know, you can at me if you want to, but waffles are greater than pancakes in my opinion. So sorry about it. I would be willing to try like a savory pancake. It seemed like they had a lot of different kinds, but it was just something that we didn't have time to explore. So you let me know if we should have done that, and we'll put it on our list of things to do next time we're there. Oh, another thing that I appreciated about the food was that they actually know what salad dressing is. So I've sometimes had problems when I go to Europe and I just want like a leafy green salad. And, the U.S. has all kinds of salads. They've got Caesar, ranch, vinaigrette, French, blue cheese, like all kinds of things. We've got salad dressings upon salad dressings. When I go to the UK, sometimes they don't serve any dressing on my salad, which is interesting. And sometimes they'll just bring like mayonnaise. And that is literally triggers my gag reflex. Like mayonnaise on salad, like no thank you. I like mayonnaise. I like it on sandwiches, like just a little bit, but can you just imagine like stirring mayonnaise onto salad leaves? Like what's the point, So, but we had salads multiple nights while we were in Amsterdam, and it was like the salad dressing that I know and love, and like they had vinaigrettes and they had cream-based ones and like all different kinds. And so, thank you for knowing how to properly dress a salad. I appreciate you. So kind of in the same vein of food, and I think this kind of goes for a lot of Europe, but the wait staff at restaurants is not very attentive. And we were trying to determine, what the actual cause of that was, because I know that the tipping percentages are a lot lower over in Europe. And so maybe as a result of this, you don't get the checkups that you get at American restaurants. But sometimes we would get served food and then something would be wrong, like a side was missing or something like that. And nobody would come back and ask, oh, did everything come out right? Things like that. And I think that like American cuisines tend to overdo it. They're not afraid to like come in and interrupt your conversation and be like, hey, how's your food going down? Hey, can I get you another drink? Things like that. And sometimes it can be a little overbearing, admittedly. But I think that there's got to be a happy medium somewhere, because I don't want to sit there for 20 minutes and not see my waiter and, have something on my meal that they forgot to leave off that I can't eat. And so then I'm stuck there. So I think that there's got to be some kind of way to like meet in the middle and find an appropriate attention, because we felt kind of like we were ignored at a lot of restaurants, and maybe we're just not comfortable with flagging people down. And I'm sure these are just cultural differences, but this was just kind of something that I picked up on while we were there. So something that I've kind of been paying attention to more and more these days is green initiatives. I'm trying to be more thoughtful how I'm taking care of the planet and like the impact I have on the earth. And so as someone who's like knowingly been paying attention to this for probably the last at least 6 months, trying to do better, we really kind of felt like the Netherlands were very picky and choosy about what green initiatives that they were supporting. Like, for example, we saw a lot of single-use items that were getting discarded a lot, but like not a lot of recycling bins around anywhere. Sometimes we would pick up a bottle of water and want to recycle it instead of having to throw it in the trash. And I saw no recycling bins at all while we were in Amsterdam, including the airport. And speaking of the airport, there was actually a water fountain there. And I kind of expected, the new water bottle fountains where you can like hold up your water bottle to a sensor and you hold it straight up and it pours water straight down in the top. I expected to see a lot of things like that, but it was like old water fountains where you have to like tilt your water bottle to the side. And then like the one that I was personally using at the airport had like no water pressure to it, and so I got my water bottle filled like maybe a quarter of the way. And it's just little things like that I, for some reason, I just really thought the Netherlands itself seems pretty progressive, because they've got like legalization and regulation of prostitution and marijuana for sale and things like that. And so I just figured that they had progressive ideals, and so I just assumed that taking care of the earth was kind of something that would go in line with that. And I guess I was just a little surprised to see not that much happening in that area. But like I said, they're kind of picky and choosy. So like we did a canal cruise, and the boat guy was telling us that in a couple of years, they're going to require that all boats in the canal be electric only. And so that's obviously a really great thing for the environment. They're clearly making strides. It's just some of the things that have been happening in other countries, like I figured they'd be up to speed and like way ahead of the game. And so I was just a little bit surprised to notice that they were not as eco-friendly as I thought they would be. And just to kind of round this out, my final impression of Amsterdam, like it's just gorgeous. My absolute favorite thing that we did there, it wasn't any tourist attraction. It wasn't the food. It wasn't the drink. It was just walking around, especially in the canal area. And this was my first trip to Europe at Christmas time. And it was just gorgeous to see all the lights up everywhere. I mean, everything is beautifully designed and constructed, and I could not get enough of Dutch architecture. It's so interesting because the buildings are like historic themselves on the outside. Like you can tell that they're hundreds of years old, but then like you'll go inside to a cafe or a restaurant or something, and they'll have like really trendy looking rustic brushed fixtures and like neon lights and like Edison bulbs and things like that. Things that are very popular and trendy right now, even though it's kind of interesting when you think about why these things are trendy and popular, because they're actually pretty vintage. And so my question is, were these things already there and they've kind of just come full circle in the style circulation? Or is it like, these things came back into style and then they got all the Edison bulbs and the neon lights and things like that. In any case, it was very beautiful. We were impressed and totally taken with how gorgeous everything was, and we could have just stayed and walked around the city forever and ever. So all in all, it was a really fabulous trip. It was quick. We left the US and then we went back to the US and only had 4 full days. And so it was kind of a whirlwind trip. But I think it was absolutely worth it, especially for the price that we paid. I think I've mentioned this before, but definitely go check out gate1travel.com. They run a lot of flash sales, and Craig and I were able to do this trip for under $1,400 for the both of us for just our flights and hotel alone. And I think that is a fabulous deal, and everybody should take advantage of it. So hopefully you enjoyed watching this video. I hope that you learned some things about Amsterdam and the Netherlands that you maybe didn't already know. Please be sure that you hit that subscribe button before you head on out of here, and come say hi to me over on my social media accounts. I do have lots of pictures coming in the near future for Amsterdam, and so keep checking those out and admire with me how gorgeous the city is. I will see you in my next video, so until then, have a great day.